Thank you for joining Kaizen Institute and nexus today for rethinking your strategy for the new normal. I'm Simon Crowther, CEO of nexus, and I'm joined here today by Joel Castro, Senior Partner at Kaizen Institute. So today we'll be discussing the findings from a recent survey that we've carried out and then discussing some topics that arise from these findings. But before we begin, I'd like to actually just show a brief video that actually highlights some of the findings themselves. As you can see from the video, there were some really interesting findings. It's obvious to say that the pandemic has had dramatic effect on organizations and people. It is challenging times for everyone. There'll be some organizations that can adapt, and they can adapt very quickly to take advantage of opportunities. There'll be others that just simply can't, and there'll be those that fail. So I think we should actually just dive into some of the questions that we've got here. I'd like to suggest there is the opportunity for you to raise questions. So if you have questions, and then at the end of the webinar, the talks that we're going through, we'll actually be able to pick those up and then respond to them. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please do submit your questions. So then looking through some of these, let's start with actually the home working. So one of the questions we asked is, what are the main difficulties in actually implementing that working from home? A lot of the responses were saying around communication, obviously, the actual people having viable working conditions around them, and then also to ensure that they can still follow up on the work that was to be done. Joel, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Hello, Simon, thank you. So I think around this topic we have many challenges and also some opportunities. Okay. Some of the challenges, as stated in the survey, are technical challenges, like guaranteeing that people have the minimal conditions and the viable conditions to work from home. And then we have other challenges, like how do we change our daily management? We found from our experience from some of our clients that this was in fact a challenge that needed to be solved, to work around the processes and think how to organize our daily management, people being at home. So they had to set the KPIs. How do we look at the KPIs? How do we make sure that everyone has access to everything, to guaranteeing that something that was 10 minutes suddenly is not 1 hour? Okay. Another challenge that people were facing was related to how do we track our processes? how do we do our process improvement, how do we track our projects, how do we deal with these being remote, working at home. And I think you can afterwards add something also related to this. And other challenge is this made people think about their processes also, because when you go home, there were some things that you were doing while working at the office or while working at your plant, working at your normal business place, that were implicit. Some processes are just implicit. They happen without really thinking on who is doing what and how. And when suddenly people need to change and go to their homes, you need to rethink some of the things that were happening naturally. But it also presents some opportunities. One is this one that I was referring. You suddenly had to review some of the processes. The other was some people were never together. We have a client where people worked from all over Europe, and people never met. They met once a month or once every quarter. And now suddenly everyone was working remotely, so they could be with their team every day. And so this also brought people together that were more distant in the past. And I think this was a good advantage. Also, there is another potential advantage. I don't think that the organizations are quite well taking the advantage of this. That is, suddenly you can live in New York and work here in London, in a London-based company. And so this also opens the opportunity to get talent from other places where today people wouldn't thought about. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this also, Simon.
Yeah, I think the sort of the location independent side of it is quite a massive one, being able to work from such distances and new locations compared to what you would have done beforehand. And absolutely, certainly in our business and businesses I've spoken to, the improved inclusivity of when sales teams typically are remote, and now they've got more. We've as a business put more processes in to make everyone more included, and that's had a positive impact on teams that were already remote. I have been actually quite surprised how quickly businesses have adapted to working from home. But I guess it's kind of obvious because there's less commuting stress, there's better work-life balance, money savings, environmental impacts, which are quite positive. The one thing that I do that I can see being a concern as we move forward, because we will probably continue to work in this way for some time beyond COVID-19, is actually when you're onboarding new people. That's something that we've really not necessarily businesses got to grips with yet. We've got a number of new starts as well. It's like, are we onboarding them as well as we would have done where they could have sat with the team? So that's a concern that I've got going forward. Also, there's the physical and mental well-being as well. So yeah, I think there are challenges yet to come, and I think that's a whole environment that's yet to be overcome.
Okay, thank you. And I think also there is other issue that is related to this, that we will need different skills from people. I think more than in the survey, there was a question related to downsizing or not, or if people were increasing the workforce. But I think that it's not really the question. Of course, some business now face more challenges. They are struggling more. But I think from the people side, there is an important question related to reskill, let's say so. Because being the business is not the question of working more remotely, but the businesses have gone more digital, more online, more online commerce and so on. So I think new skills from the people will be needed. And I think this is also a challenge when we look at the pandemic and the influences on people and on talent and on how it will be managed from now on. I think it's also a point here.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good point. I think if you're in an organization that's got a sort of strategic redirection, you're going to need a new skill set in that organization. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Should we go on to another question?
Yes, I think so. So I think we had also another question here that was related with the speed of adapting and how do the people find their strategic planning and their strategy follow up. If they thought it was strong enough, if it was adapting quickly enough to the challenges. I think I was not surprised with the answers when people saying, okay, we struggle there. There was a challenge here on speeding up, because even without the pandemic, 70% of the strategies fail on implementation. Okay, this is some statistics that are out there. And so why should with the pandemic be different? I think it only highlighted this issue. Of course, the pandemic also highlighted one thing that was already out there about the agility, about the speed of the organization, and this highlighted that need. Okay, in terms of strategy, I think there are two main things here. One is related to the process, as I said, and I think the strategy follow-up needs to be more agile. Okay, we need to have a better process. When I talk about this, I'm talking about you need to have a better countermeasure analysis. Okay, you need to have a frequent follow-up of the strategy, not once a quarter looking at the balance sheet, but every month or every week with a more frequent review the targets to improve, the processes that you need to review, and have a countermeasure process that allows you to correct the deviations. If you have this in place, if you have this mindset, if you have this culture, you are already setting up for reviewing the strategy very frequently, and you can adapt and you can cope better with the changes that we are facing. Okay, so one, I think it's process. The other one, of course, when you talk about the pandemics, I think there are many things that were accelerated. Okay. There was, if we think about the online commerce, if you think about the remote work, if you think about digital marketing, okay, there is also an important thing about digital marketing, because now you have to change the way you contact your clients. Suddenly, people don't go to the store. Suddenly, people go online and see. Suddenly, the trade fairs that were organized before are not happening anymore. So how do you reach to your clients? And also, again, how do we track our strategy if we are not present with each other, if we are at home, and how do we do this, Simon? Something also.
Yeah, important. I think that's a point I'd like to pick up on. Actually, I think the ability to actually, as you say, there's two halves to this. There's a process side of it, and then there's an ability to actually execute on strategy. And what I do know is businesses today, I can see they've got to be doing one of three things. They've either got to be innovating, they've got to grow their revenue, possibly to replace some lost revenue, or actually they're going into some kind of cost reduction. And none of them are actually necessarily a bad thing out of that. But we know that businesses are going to struggle. And what it is what's important is how quickly they can act and how they're able to act and how they're able to review. And as you say, have they got those processes in place? And particularly when it comes to the sort of the execution and the review on strategy, it's something that people are typically, they do in a room. They all get together and they all fly in for one day and they talk for a day and a month, keep things moving, etc. And it's quite hard to do that. So what I found quite interesting of recent was I had a customer contact me and he said during this time, they couldn't have managed to imagine delivering on their strategy and their reviews, their war room that they have without it being in a digital form. And he talks to me how he just walks downstairs and he dials into a senior management meeting, gets everybody together. He can run a strategic meeting across the business, all from his desk. And that's because it's been digitalized. And what I found interesting around that comment was it was the fact that he was talking around strategy being digitalized, being that it was a notable point, because execution of strategy is just no different to any other core process. If you're doing CRM or finance, they're all automated, they're all digital, they're all important. I think that's it. If you deem it to be important, you've got to get clear on the process, as you mentioned, and you need to automate. And I think this pandemic has just highlighted that you've got to be able to be quick to respond. So just moving on to another question, actually, which is along that lines, and I think you started to touch on it actually then, Joel. Another point that came up in our questions was, what are the initiatives that businesses are planning now to increase their revenue? And the responses to that came around, particularly around improving their marketing processes, their digital marketing, strengthening their e-commerce, etc. What are your thoughts on that as a response to what people are planning to do as a response?
I think there are two sides also here. I think there is one more, let's say, OPEX related and traditional areas of focus of Kaizen, which is, okay, we need to adapt to e-commerce, we need to adapt to remote working, to the daily management. So we need to rethink our processes. How do we set up these processes that is, let's say, more related to continuous improvement? And there's another very important side of it that is now growing a lot, which is related to digital marketing and the account-based marketing, okay? Because suddenly we cannot reach our clients, or we need to reach them in a different way. But at the same time and in parallel, you have totally different tools that you had before. Because using digital tools, you can do a great segmentation, a very good segmentation of your clients, but you can also track what he is interested on. You can nurture that lead in a different way than physically, and you can approach that lead, that possible client, already knowing and understanding his customer journey, his customer experience through the marketing funnel. And doing this physically is much more difficult. So I think we have the need from one side of reaching out customers in a different way. Yeah. You have the new tools, that digital tools that allow you to do that in a different way. So I think the pandemic, the COVID-19, really allowed for an acceleration in these digital marketing processes. Of course, like we said before, doing it digitally is just an enabler. It's not the end at itself. So you still need to review the processes and think, okay, how do I do this? Okay, but I think this is a very interesting question. And of course, this also comes out of the need of suddenly you don't have business, so you need to grow your revenues, and you need to think about how do you do this? How do you grow your revenue? And of course, you have some great examples on a lot of companies that are doing new things, taking the advantage of this. And I think there are some stats also of the speed in adopting these technologies. No, Simon?
Yeah, so I was actually just about to pick up on that one when you said finding a new way to connect with the buyer. I'm just actually going to bring up a graph here. So this is should be able to see that now. This is a graph of its stats from the Office of National Statistics for the UK, and it looks at internet sales. And it just shows the percentage of revenue, of total revenue that is actually done on the internet. And you can see in 2013, it was around about 10% of revenue was done on the internet. And it's just straight, as you can see, just straight linear growth. Peaks at Christmas time, all the peaks are when it's happening around about Christmas. In 2019, it was just below 20%. So it took about 9 years, 7 or 8, 6, 7 years to actually grow by 10%. But what we've actually seen now in this year is gone up to 30%. So that's 9 years growth, 10% in just 1 year. So that really is quite a strong point of, how this has accelerated that internet use, and how, to your point, you've got to find a new way to connect to your buyer. So I like that. And when you're talking about examples, I think there's just so many examples of businesses responding in a positive or disastrous way for them. I think there's a business called Bedford Industries. It's in Minnesota. It's kind of 200 million revenue business. But what they do, they have beautiful packaging and branding solutions. It's really, really strong business. And e-commerce for them, it was absolutely not what they did. It was business to business, and they didn't have any e-commerce at all, but they always knew that they'd want to do it at some point. It was a long-term goal. And through the pandemic, they won the demand for what they were creating. They also had the introduction of that protective gear as well. They could create that quite easily. And they had to really quickly think of how they could actually interact with their customers, and they had to build out new e-commerce site, etc. And they had to do that in months, but yet it was something that was years off in their planning. So that's something that I think is quite a good example. You also, I'll just go off another one. I mean, there's just so many, but I mean, in the UK here, we've got Aldi have just launched their click and collect service, which I'm sure they were planning to do click and collect anyway. It's a great way of reaching more customers naturally, but that has been accelerated dramatically. You can see they've trialed it in September and they've launched it now here in the UK in the last couple of weeks. And that is, that's a shift. Suddenly they've got a website where you can go and click, buy your stores. There's plenty of other examples with Amazon, M&S, what they've been doing as well. We could go on.
Okay. I think also interesting in terms of examples is that in grocery retail, let's say so, let's call it this way, we were already seeing some tendencies. I agree with you when you say, okay, it has speeded up, but I think it's very interesting when you look at, we have some examples of industrial clients, like ceramics producers or agro machine producers, or even wine producers, people that were selling B2B, that were not so much on the online business, that they were thinking, okay, it's there, we put just an online store, a very rudimentary one. We don't touch nothing about digital marketing, because they were thinking, okay, this is more personal. We know our clients because they are not so much as being on a B2B business. And now suddenly they have realized that they really need to change, because this is not possible. I had one ceramics client saying to me, okay, we needed to set up a virtual showroom visit, because we don't have the trade fairs. It's impossible for our clients to come and visit and see the products and touch. So it's also very interesting in more traditional businesses, more industrial, more B2B businesses, the impact that this is having on changing the way the business is going. In fact, he was also telling to me, this ceramics producer, that I'm finding difficult to find people for digital marketing, for digital tools, so that I can set up these processes, because now the demand is so big on this kind of talent that I'm finding difficult to do this, because the people I currently have, they will need to do this shift, and it's difficult to make this shift on the skills at the speed we need. So I need to do a mixture of new people together with the people we have currently. And I think this is very interesting also from the perspective of changing the way things are happening.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that we haven't really touched on that much, is the demand for that kind of talent, online talent, or even just development talent. There's going to be an exponential growth on that, because of businesses, as you say, traditional businesses that just have no need to be online, and now having to turn to being online. So no, I think it's very good point.
Okay.
So just a quick point to everybody watching today: do remember to actually submit questions so we can pick them up shortly. After this, we'll run through some of those. So do remember to do that. Another question was, there were two kind of points, fairly linked questions. One was around the most popular measure of improving employee motivation, and that came down to focusing on continuous improvement, cultural transformation. And then another question was around most popular strategic initiatives to reduce costs, and that again came down to implementing continuous improvement and then automation as well. So there's a bit of a crossover between the two there. Yeah, just interested in your thoughts on that.
Okay, I think this is very interesting, but if you think about it, and as we were talking through this conversation, let's say so, it's really all about the continuous improvement again, because at the beginning we're speaking about, okay, you need to change the way you do your daily management, because people suddenly are at home. Okay, so we go back to, okay, review your daily management processes. Then there is a huge demand for on one side, on the cost side, because revenues were lost, so people needed to countermeasure on that. And on the other side, the only thing, not the only, but one big part of what is working is online commerce, e-commerce, digital processes. So you need to rethink your processes. So you go back again to changing your processes, which also related to continuous improvement. And the third part is related to strategy review, because we say that to do Kaizen, to do continuous improvement, you need to, which is improve every day, everywhere, every person. You need 3 processes or 3 behaviors that need to be changed. The daily management, and the impact on daily management is huge with remote working and people needing to be with more physical distance. Then you add the change your processes, okay? Question the way you do your processes and change them. And now there is a huge need on that, either by the cost side, either by the increased revenue side and the online side. And then you need to set up a good strategy, a good goals. And so you also were impacted on your strategy because you suddenly had to rethink your businesses, the way you were working. And all together with this, and because you cannot do this without people, you need to change to manage the change. The change management process is fundamental here because people are more afraid. People don't know what will happen in the future. Like we said before, you need to have new skills. You need to learn new ways of working. And so you also need to work on these things. And I think so that's why I think it also comes back to, okay, we need to our continuous improvement processes, okay? And it also, the motivation of people is also linked to this because people need support on this process of changing and improving the businesses and taking the opportunities. I'm a very optimistic person, and I always like to look at the glass half full. And so I think there are opportunities here. I think there will be a lot of businesses that will adopt these new tendencies faster than others that will take the advantage of this. Only taking advantage of the digital marketing and the digital tools that we have available, only by doing that, it's a huge opportunity to increase revenue, to reach new clients, to reach new markets that never thought about us. So I think there is also, I would like to leave this positive message of opportunities, not only challenges and difficult things. I think there is also these opportunities.
Absolutely. I think you've covered most of the points on that. I'd say there is the opportunity for individuals and teams, functions to rally around that common cause of improvement or cost reduction, for example. It isn't necessarily all negative. Absolutely. What I think is there's quite a few questions that we've got coming in. I think we should actually turn to the Q&A at this point. So looking at, let's move on to that. Okay, so there are quite a few questions, which is great to see. Let's go through some of these. I'm going to start by grouping a number of them together, that similar themes. So there's quite a few focusing on work. So do you think organizations will go back to old ways of working after COVID, after the crisis comes to an end? And what about organizations reducing their office space? There's quite a few in that theme. Gerard, do you want to have a crack at answering that one?
Okay, thank you, Simon. No, I don't think things will go back to the old ways. Okay, I think that we will be somewhere in between. There are some things that have come to stay. If you think about remote work, if you think the way people are working, people found out so many advantages that I think it won't go back. Of course, we have to change the way we manage our teams. We have to change the way we deal with our projects. We have to change these processes, but I think things won't go back. Also the same for e-commerce, online business. I think also things won't go back as they were before, because people suddenly have taken the opportunity to experience different things, see how all the advantages. So I think things won't go back. And I think that for the business side, things like digital marketing, things like KPIs, like time from click to door, will become frequent and will become well known. What I think is that at the end, if the businesses don't adapt themselves to the new ways of working, if they don't adopt and integrate these new ways of doing businesses and living, let's say so, they will stay behind. So the ones that are faster to react and to adapt will take the opportunities that these changes in the way we do things highlight these opportunities.
Yeah, I think when I think of old ways of working, I think of going to the office. I think of travel. Now, a lot of obviously roles, industries, they're core to how they operate, where they need to go into various environments. But I always think of going to the office, and I think of travel. And you said it on the going to the office. I think businesses are taking a very hard look at their space. I've spoken to quite a few organizations where they quite literally have millions of square footage of office space on campuses, etc. And they're actually only 67% utilized even before COVID. So this is taking and now there's mandates to actually go and reduce rental costs, etc. in space. And I think this is an opportunity for organizations to optimize. It's absolutely certainly. I think, as you say, the workforce, I think they want to embrace this hybrid approach. And ultimately, the working at home has been proven. On the travel side, I think I find that absolutely fascinating. I think business people, there's nothing quite like actually seeing a client, a customer in person. It is great for building those relationships. It's really good for securing the sort of the finer details on contracts where people get together and hash something out from that point of view. And it's really good, certainly in the M&A world, from understanding how a business actually works inside. So I do think people will travel as part of their role when you think about returning to work. What I do find fascinating on the travel side, just to go into that for a second, travel was increasing every single year from 2010 to 2020. It wasn't slowing. It showed no signs of slowing at all. But now it's absolutely ground to a halt, the corporate travel. And it was not like a burst. It wasn't like the dot-com sort of bubble bursting. It was a handbrake that was applied to it, which is quite different. It wasn't a natural conclusion that it stopped. People were forced to find solutions and to find new ways of working, so they can do business without traveling. On the other side, I don't think businesses will want people to visit them. We've actually had some customers saying to us, they're very conscientious around the environmental side of things, and actually that includes people spending a lot of time coming to see them. So I think that there's a potential to see that kick in. And a final note on working conditions. I think I definitely see CFOs grabbing the funds that are usually allocated to office space or to travel. And what I hope is they are being directed massively into their strategy to effectively transform their business to deal with this new normal. Joël, do you want to pick up the next question?
Yes, I can take the next question, but before that, let me just give some examples about this that you were talking about, the office work, because we have some clients. Just to have two examples. One is a big multinational company that on the budget for 2021, they already considered, when comparing to 2019, of course, to reduce in between 20 to 30% the travel cost, okay? Because they assume that a lot of the meetings they were doing before don't need to be physical anymore. And also we have a client, a city hall, and they were asking and they were challenging us, saying, okay, now during the lockdown, now everyone is at home, and before everyone was working here. So when this ends, why do we need to come back 100% to the office? So what's the processes that we need to change to maybe be in between? Maybe people come to the office once or twice a week, but what are the standards? When do they come? Why do they come? What's the purpose, and how do we track their activity? So it's very, very interesting, this. So we have here another one. And so after the pandemic, do you think consumers will shift again to their previous behaviors?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the other way around. So rather than the working conditions, actually consumers, what they're doing. I think this is a massive topic. I think what we know is that internet purchases have obviously jumped 5 years from where they should have been. We know that the digital shift there has been a digital shift in consumers' behavior. It's sped up. I think it sped up transformation that was naturally occurring. And again, it's forced our hands in terms of how we sell products, and therefore it's forced our hands in exploring new ways of buying that we just wouldn't have done beforehand. And what I think is ultimately people like convenience and the ability to purchase immediately in ways on products that we just wouldn't have expected to engage in the way that we are. It's with minimal inconvenience, and that then we can plow that effort into things that we actually love doing beyond purchasing and buying, etc. I think businesses are going to have to think extremely smart on this. It's going to have to be very smart. It's not just about having an online e-commerce solution. It's actually about how people are engaging with their brand. So setting up an online store and driving traffic, that isn't enough. You've got to think about how people are engaging with the brand. On the other hand, though, I do think people enjoy that human interaction. So something's going to have to fill that void at some point. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it.
No, I think you are quite on the topic. So I don't have much more to add to this.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we've got quite a few more questions. So there's one around pharmacies optimizing. I'll go through this, but Joe, perhaps you're better at answering this one. So is there any experience of how big pharma companies are optimizing their sales force if they cannot now easily visit hospitals, talk to healthcare professionals, etc.?
Okay, so thank you. It's specific on the pharma sector. I don't have any specific use case now, let's say so. But what I do know from other businesses is that the way we contact our clients has changed a lot. And so we also need to change our marketing and sales activities. And what we are seeing from many B2B customers is that they are really adopting now the digital marketing and the possibilities that the digital tools allow of nurturing the leads we have, of contacting the clients we have, of sending real useful information that they value, because you can track when you send some information, what have they seen, how long they looked at it, what's the things they do interest them more. And so you can take these advantages of the account-based marketing, doing it digitally, okay? And some of the experience we have from other B2B businesses. Of course, others have the challenge, like I talked before, that ceramics company of the virtual showroom. Others, like I have examples of textile industry, where using some new tools. I know a company called Platform E, which enables 3D modeling, that you look at the garments as if you were seeing them. You almost can feel the texture, okay? So there are some new things that are out there that will enable these things, okay?
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, it's a tough one, quite specific to pharma. Yeah, it's a tough one. This one actually says, hi Simon, what do you consider to be so difficult in the onboarding process? I'm going to assume that's onboarding from a solution point of view on strategy execution, assuming there's a process in place and actually they need to move to a digital automated platform. So what I've been surprised for us is with our customers, I've been surprised how quickly organizations have been able to adopt to deploying software remotely, and it was almost hassle-free. It just switched over. And I was quite surprised at how that actually happened. What I have seen though, is the strategy formulation part. That is far tougher to do remotely, to capture the passion and the drive of what people are wanting to achieve. And there's multiple inputs, lots of competing priorities, it's the formulation to determine this is what we're going to go and do. That I am seeing being quite tough to do remotely. It's hard for people to get a lot of airtime working in these environments. So that's something that needs massive improvement. And you can see that with technologies, with how whiteboarding is coming along compared to even where it was 6 months ago. But the actual process of onboarding a customer, it's not been the challenge that we thought it would be. We used to always go on site. That initial kind of discovery session is tougher. But actually, yeah, we're finding new ways of working with that every single time we bring on a new customer. There's one around supply chain. which I think, João, if you could answer this one. What do customers need to do differently to gain sustainable supply chain support?
Okay, so this is a very interesting one and quite wide. So I think one of the things that is out there for sure is that we will need to have in the future more sustainable supply chains. Okay, from one side, this pandemic shown that for security of supply reasons, maybe things will need to be closer to us. But also from terms of sustainability, clients and customers will start to need to think differently and try to look at more local supply chains. Okay, because if you think about online consumers, online e-commerce, there is a very important thing that is the last mile transport and how do we transport things all around. And so these things will be out there, and for sure we will have things like more local consumption and other things related to this, like the packaging and so on, that are also out there. But I think when you think about these relations, I think it's pretty much related to this.
Yeah, I think one thing you see a lot of themes going on through this is the environmental impact, or the positive environmental impact. So you think of travel, people work, going to the offices, etc. And then you say there around actually supply chain going more locally, and that's something that has been a drive with environmental as well. So that's one thing that can certainly be said, is it is the environmental kind of aspects of this has certainly been accelerated as well, which I've really not looked into or thought an awful lot about. But yeah.
Sorry, let me just
interrupt
you. Of course, then there are things related to the business. Okay, for instance, you are seeing that in fashion industry, there are many businesses that are rethinking the way they do things. Okay, because why? They have very long supply chains with the use of lot of predictions to fill up the supply chain with stock for the upcoming season, and every year they burn or they will send to landfills hundreds and tons of garments. And so that's also something that is changing, because you need to produce more locally. You need to change the way you do your business to a more MTO, make to order processes, so that you can adapt to the demand faster. And this really implicates that you are at least producing the refillments for the stores in a closer place where the consumption is, so that you can reduce the waste and be more sustainable also about that.
Yeah, very good point. I'm going to take a final question, which is really quite, really in essence of the main topic that we've been covering. And it's around, the current crisis has pushed businesses to adapt incredibly quickly, very swiftly. And once, though, this external factor has gone, do we think organizations will continue to keep this ability to react quickly, if they have that in the first place? Do you want to go first on that?
Okay, thank you. So yes, I think so. So I think the need for speed, the need for quick adaptation, the question of agile organizations was already out there. Okay, yeah. Businesses were already facing this, but with the pandemic, I think it has highlighted and it accelerated this need, because we have to react very quickly. We have to readapt our strategy. We have to readapt the way we sell, the way we reach our customers, the way we manage teams. So it really highlighted this. And if you think about the process of the strat to action, or the strat review, as we also call it, I think there are three key elements there that relate to this speed. One is having challenging targets that allow you to question the way you do things. Okay, and this is a little bit what happened now. You had very challenging targets, very challenging demands that really demanded people and organizations to rethink the way they do things. Another very important thing is you have to have a good countermeasure processes. So you have to monitor very frequently where you are and react very quickly to the deviations. Okay, and you have to set up a process to do this in order to allow you to have the speed. And another very important thing that I think it was already out there and also relates to this is what we call the catch the ball process. Why? To have a quick reaction, you can no longer live in a command of teams. This is an organization where the decision goes upwards, downwards of the organization, and has several levels and layers to go through, because it takes a lot of time. So you need to have the ability to decide and react even on strategic levels in your teams. And to have this team of teams, one of the most important things is that people need to have a common purpose. People need to really understand the strategy, where do you want to go? And one of the fundamental things that allows to have this team of teams with purpose, with deep commitment and learning of the strategy, is what we call the catch the ball process, that allows all the organization to be part of the strategy building and to be committed to that strategy. And if you have this, you really have a team of teams that is able to react quickly and make the decisions, and you no longer need to go to the top leader to make the decisions, because this is very slow. We are no longer, the world is changing so fast. Every day we face these challenges that you need to do this. And you don't feel it not only in the small decisions, let's say this between commas, the small decisions of day to day. You also need to have quick readaptation of the strategy of the way you are doing this. And to do this properly, teams need to have a shared vision, and this catch the ball process really allows this. So I think this need for speed is there and will continue to be there. This pandemic only has highlighted this. And I think these three capabilities that are within the Kaizen process of strategy are really important to have this. So you need to have challenging targets. You need to have a good countermeasure process that allows you to correct deviations fast. And you need to have a good catch the ball processes that allows you to have a shared vision, a common purpose that the team of teams can really deliver and react quickly.
That's a great answer. I do love that point of to be fast and to be agile. You need decisions to be made where the knowledge is. And for the knowledge to be at the core of where the business is, they need to be empowered. They need to understand what they're trying to achieve. I do love what you're talking around there. It's good. It's a great topic. And what I think pretty much exactly the same. I think businesses have always had to react to things that are happening all of the time around them. It's just highlighted how quickly an organization can respond. It's made people look at how their ability to respond, and have they got those three core principles in place that you said. I think they've always had to go, are my in-flight projects that I'm doing today, are they still relevant? They were at some point in time because they were picked, they were prioritized. Can you actually still deliver that portfolio, and is it aligned to the strategic goals? I think once that review process, and as you said, the three core sort of points that you make out there, once they're in place as part of a normal operating model in a business, then something massive like COVID can come along, and yes, it's still going to knock you, but you can respond quickly. As I say frequently, strategy without that frequent, rigorous review, it's just wishful thinking. And I just think it's been highlighted at this point. I think, João, I'm going to call it there. So we've answered most of the questions. But João Castro from Kaizen Institute, I would like to thank you. It's been a pleasure to be talking with you today. You bring some great points, certainly food for thought for myself. For everyone else listening, on behalf of Kaizen Institute and iNexus, thank you for taking part in the survey, if you did. We hope that you've enjoyed today's discussion. If you have any further questions on any of these topics or anything beyond that, feel free to reach out to us directly, and we will be sharing a recording of this webinar very shortly. So take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.